we're going to play some Standard this week. I did pretty well with green-white tokens a couple weeks ago. There's SCG Orlando this weekend, which I may or may not attend. Currently looking for a good way to get there because I want to battle, you know. I'm already qualified for the Players' Championship, but this format has been a lot of fun. Green-white tokens is pretty obviously the best deck, but at the same time, you know, I gotta find out who my enemies are, and I did a versus video that is going up sometime this week, either before or after this video, I'm not sure which, and I kind of got manhandled by the Sultai deck in the hands of Michael Majors, so this deck is one of the few decks that I think is doing the mid-range thing just as well as the green-white deck is, but at the same time just kind of goes over the top, and it has a lot of cards like Dragon Lord Silumgar, Mr. Steal Yo Girl, that is, yeah, it just allows you to go over the top and has a lot of cards that are just like really well positioned against Planeswalkers in general. So, yeah, your typical anti-control / mid-range plan for green-white tokens kind of hinges on Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, and Dragon Lord Silumgar just kind of destroys that, you know. So, Sylvan Advocate plus Tireless Tracker are a pretty good core for mid-range decks. Tracker provides both a little beatdown machine that is good against Planeswalkers, just because like if you play Tracker, they play Gideon, you can play a land, attack your Tracker into their Gideon, and they have to keep chumping and stuff, and if you have a removal spell, like an ultimate price, then you just get to kill their Gideon. So Tracker's pretty nice, gets pretty big, and gives you a nice little card advantage engine. Sylvan Advocate kind of holds the fort and does the same sort of stuff against Planeswalkers, where it's really difficult to block profitably, especially since you have a lot of instant speed removal in the 2-drop slot. We have 4 ultimate prices, 2 Grasp of Darkness. I feel like 4 ultimate price might be kind of risky, but I feel like that's what you have to go with, considering the mana base, considering you need a lot of green mana early. So ultimate price is very, very good. Obviously a little weak against things like Reality Smasher and Eldrazi Displacer, but I think Reality Smasher just kind of beats up this deck. But you do have Transgress the Mind to take out Reflector Mages and Collected Companies and Reality Smashers, stuff like that. Like whatever you think the biggest threat for you is going to be, depending on what your hand is. And if they don't have a Reflector Mage, then Kalitas sticks, and it's just bad times if you're a creature deck pretty much. So a couple of Read the Bones, some Nissa, Vastwood Seers for the 3-drop card advantage, which I like a lot. We have a couple of Ruinous Paths. When I first looked at the deck list, I was like, man, I feel like this deck should have some more Ruinous Paths, just because Gideon is such a big deal in this format. But at the same time, you do have a lot of creatures to actually pressure the Gideon, so you don't necessarily need a clean removal answer to it. Plus, there are things like Kalitas that just kind of get out of control and can very easily just beat Gideon in kind of the heads-up battle. A couple Languishes to reset. If the mono-white human decks were a bigger portion of the metagame, I would probably want more Languishes, but since you do have Advocate and Tracker, Languish is kind of a non-bow in your deck. This is kind of more of like the emergency reset button, which I like. And then there's a mini Dark Petition, like kind of tutory package. So you end up having like more functional Languishes because you should have Spell Mastery most of the time in this deck, and then turn 6 you can just get a Languish if you need to. Otherwise, it sets up your pretty powerful plays like Silumgar's Command or Dragon Lord Silumgar. Then there's an Omnixilus at the top end. This could be seen as like a tutor target for Dark Petition, but since it is so expensive, I don't necessarily consider it part of the tutor package. I just think like one Omnixilus is in a pretty good place for Standard right now, just as a big fat Planeswalker that's pretty good. This deck could have the Seasons Past. I have it in the sideboard, but there's no ramping, there's no Nissa's Renewal or anything like that, so Seasons Past is a little slow, a little clunky. So I didn't really want it in the main deck, and I wanted to see whether or not I actually needed it. You know, it just felt like most of the time you're just going to find like a big card with Dark Petition, like a Dragon Lord Silumgar, and that's going to be enough to propel you kind of, past the mid game into the late game. You should be pretty far ahead at that point. Other than that, mana base pretty standard. We have 6 paint lands, 9 ETB tap lands, 26 lands total. We have things like Nissa Vastwood Seer that kind of add to the mana base too. Read the Bones can help find lands if you need them. And the mana is like pretty split. There's not a lot of blue sources because there aren't a lot of blue cards either in the main deck or sideboard, so it's just like a very, very light splash. Evolving Wilds obviously very good with Tireless Tracker. 5 creature lands for the Sylvan Advocate. The Lumbering Falls might be a bit much, and the mana base is split evenly between green and black, except for the 2 Yavimaya Coasts and the Lumbering Falls. And I feel like you're probably not going to be able to activate the Falls very much, so maybe the Falls should just be like a swamp or something. I don't know, but we'll figure that out. As for the sideboard, I kind of just have like a random mix of cards. Second Silumgar's Command seems like it is a card that you would like to naturally draw in the green-white tokens matchup. Apparently, Moto says this is not in my collection, but I disagree. So yeah, I like siding in a second one. Couple Duresses, couple Negates for other control and mid-range decks. The one thing I'm worried about as far as Negate is concerned is that it is not great against the blue Ulamog decks. Like, you can use it to counter one of their Planeswalkers or their counter spells, but you can't stop Drowner of Hope or Ulamog with it. So this deck is going to be leaning on Infinite Obliteration a decent amount, I think, to beat that deck, but that's also fine. Third copy of Languish. I think this is just good against the Collected Company decks and the mono-white human decks. Languish is not very good against green-white tokens. I might keep one in after board just to have it as a tutor target, but it is definitely not something you want to lean on. You'd rather just progress your board and beat them that way. And because you know, one of the reasons we don't need Languish is because we have 2 Virulent Plagues. You could probably just get away with only 1 copy, but if they are smart and, you know, Sultai actually picks up as a deck that is just kind of there as the foil to green-white tokens, I would imagine that people move back to Angelic Purge as an answer to both Kalitas and Virulent Plague. And if your first plague is basically always going to die, then I think you do want the second copy. So also just, again, kind of a reasonable card to just naturally draw against them. And then I got a Grip of Desolation. It's kind of a weirdo, but I think I want it against the blue Ulamog decks. I feel like it's pretty sweet there. It might actually be good against green-white tokens also, because you could like take out an Avacyn and a Westvale Abbey with 1 card, but it is very expensive. But I want to try it out, and if we play against any ramp decks, it's certainly good there. You know, you get to exile their Worldbreaker and their Shrine or whatever. A couple Deadweights just as earlier removal for various human decks. Third copy of Read the Bones for grindy matchups. A Pulse of Marasso, which is probably just nonsense, but, you know. It's kind of like the best tutor target that gains life. So, I don't know, like Blue-Red Flyers is a deck where you might want this. And I'm not sure if you actually want the life gain card against, like, the human decks or whatever, but even if it was just like 2G gain 6 life, like you might play it against them, just because it gives you like another turn and a half probably. And then I have the Seasons Past. Again, this is kind of similar to the Read the Bones, where it just comes in grindy matchups. But yep, that's it. Sultai Midrange, I do feel like this and the Blue Ulamog deck are probably the 2 best decks against green-white tokens. If you're just looking to beat that deck and not necessarily join them, I think I'm still on the join them camp, but we'll see how this goes. You know, maybe I just end up being like, man, this deck's the nut, but we'll see.